Hello and welcome to this tutorial for TypeHelp. This is a game that I made. My name is Nick Pasto, and I am the creator of a few Flash games you may be familiar with. I made A Bobo's Big Adventure, Portal Defenders, Chibi Night, and Super Chibi Night, and a bunch of other ones that you can find on my Newgrounds account under the name BoMToons or under my other name PestoForce. TypeHelp is a game that I just finished for the Newgrounds Flash Forward Jam. And the point of this jam on Newgrounds is to release a whole bunch of Flash games after the death of Flash. Today is January 12th, 2021. It's the official end of life for the Flash player. But Flash lives on, fortunately, through emulation done by Ruffle. And so real quick, I wanted to just give a plug to Ruffle. This is saving the history of Flash games on the web. It actually emulates the Flash player, but with all the web standards that the modern web requires. Right now, it will only emulate ActionScript 1 and ActionScript 2 games, but the ActionScript 3 support is under development, and they're making good progress on it. So this game, TypeHelp, is a game that I just finished. I made it using ActionScript 2. And what you're looking at here is Ruffle's emulation of the SWF file, which I think is just really cool. And this game is a bit of an experiment for me, as you'll see as we go on here. This video is the tutorial, or not really tutorial, I guess it's the walkthrough for this game. So one other note is that this Ruffle allows you to play these games on mobile devices also. So I've been testing this on my iPad, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to click play, and as you can see here, TypeHelp is a text adventure game with a bit of a twist built into it that will be revealed here as we go on. So it starts out by saying you are in a dark, dank cell with a dirt floor. Wan moonlight streams in from a small barred window. You see ragged blanket, chamber pot, window, door. And then you can see there's a prompt area down here to type in. Anything you type on the keyboard will show up there. You can erase by pressing backspace. You can type something and then hit enter or press enter in the UI down here, and it will bring up a response to that. So since I typed in garbage, it just says command unclear or impossible. Try typing in the verb item format, example look room or get banana or go mountain. This keyboard down here is just used for mobile devices, so it's kind of like a software virtual keyboard. You can click shift to switch between the regular keyboard and then a few extra symbols that are built in here. And arrows come in valuable, you'll see, for something later on. Backspace is up here. You can click this TypeHelp icon here to go to the typehelp.org website. And why is there a website specifically just for this text adventure game? That will be revealed here shortly as well. So I'm going to start out by typing look again, and there we are with that same description. And I would recommend looking around the room and trying different stuff because there's a bit of humor built in here and there, but I'm just, for the sake of brevity, just going to speed run this. So get blanket says you take the ragged blanket, it feels like it will disintegrate soon. Type inventory or inv to see what you have. So if you type inv, it'll tell you what you're carrying. So I have the ragged blanket. A lot of items that have multiple words in their names, you can also refer to just by the shortened version of that, their alias. So you can say look blanket, and it will know that you're talking about the ragged blanket. A beat up thin old blanket that is too short to cover your feet when you sleep. So if I look again, there's the chamber pot. Get pot. Take the chamber pot, its innards slightly spill onto your hands. Type inventory, etc., etc. If you look at the window, you see two thick iron bars prevent you from leaving this way. The faint smell of freedom contrasts strongly with the stench of your cell. And so the secret to this room is to use pot with blanket, and you can type this in a variety of ways and it will give you the same result. You dip the blanket in the urine. The blanket seems much stronger now. You retch slightly and accidentally drop the chamber pot. It shatters, splattering you in your own filth. So this is something that most people might not notice, but if you look again now from the chamber pot shattering, there's now a pot shard on the floor. So if you say get shard, you now have that, which will come in useful later on. So in my inventory now, I have the pot shard and the soaked blanket. So now, if I use blanket on bars, you twist the wet blanket against the window bars with all your strength. They bend enough for you to barely slip through. You fall out of the window into a courtyard. So that action right there actually pushes you out of the room automatically. So if you haven't gotten the pot shard at this point, you would have to go back to the cell to pick it back up, because you'll need it later. So I just typed, look, you are in a brick-lined courtyard. The first hint of dawn peeks over the horizon. A riverbank emits the sound of crashing water on one side. A shallow cave lies on your other side. A dark forest is in front of you. Your cell is behind you. You can go to forest, cave, riverbank, cell. So I'm going to go forest. You enter the forest area. Trees jut into the sky all around you. In front of you are 3 hollowed-out tree stumps. In the first, a red demon glowers at you. In the second, a green goblin smiles evilly. The last stump has a blue imp that appears to be asleep on a towel. You can go to courtyard. You see red demon, green goblin, sleeping, blue imp, imp, towel. So if you talk to the demon, he says, gives you this riddle. The demon spits out, player son, say my name for fortune and fame. Powerful ones have tried from shoguns to samurai, but in the end I always say goodbye. It begins with O and ends with A, so tell me, what will you say? So this is a riddle. Obviously there's some hints here to Japanese culture, and then the word goodbye, and also there's kind of a play on words that ties into this. I'm not sure how many people will actually figure this out on their own. That's part right here is the main reason for this walkthrough. So the key to this riddle is you actually say his name, which is the Japanese word for goodbye, but you split out the S-A-Y part from the ending. So you say Onara, and the demon sputters incredulously. Ack, you've guessed my name. As a reward, take this mystical command from my dimension, Cmd. So Cmd is going to come in, is going to play a big role in your future if you really get into this game. So if you just type Cmd, it says you experience the shock of world-controlling power as you think the command word, yet it somehow feels incomplete. So you know that Cmd is important, has some power behind it, but there's more you need to add to Cmd to make it work properly. So I'm going to look again, and I'm going to talk to Goblin this time. The goblin utters, Smort sil na smeti stil ot draw at ndkamak ot si yoi ot tne in drakab kaips e. Well, if you read this backwards, it says, I speak backward. My hint to you is to command, in stars, the world to list items and list rooms. So this is where you can combine what you've learned so far from the demon and the goblin. Oh yeah, if you look at this room, there's a sleeping blue imp that's on a towel. You need that towel basically, but if you try to get the towel, there's no way you'll risk angering the imp by stealing his pillow towel. If you talk to the imp, he says you start to speak to the imp. He briefly wakes up and with bleary eyes mutters, apple, hungry for apple, golden apple. The imp falls back into a deep sleep. So you'll notice if you go to all the rooms that are available and look around, there's no golden apple. And that's where the CMD commands start to come in. So CMD list items actually shows you behind the scenes all of the items that are in the code base for this game. You can see this list here starting at 0 going through 7. All the items that are in the game attached to various rooms, except for the golden apple. So the golden apple shows up here. It's one of the items in the game, but it is not attached to any rooms, and that's the puzzle that you have to solve. So if you do CMD list rooms, you see all the rooms that are in the code base. And you can see there's the cell, the courtyard, the riverbank, the cave, and the forest. And if you were to say CMD view room, like it says up at the top there, it gives you the syntax to use to view the details of each room. If you say CMD view room 0, this is where you see all the properties associated with this particular room. So it's showing me room ID 0. Its first property is the rooms that are attached to it. Its second property is its name. The third property is its description. The fourth property are world items that are attached to this room by default. And the fifth property is the retrievable items. Those are items that you can pick up that can go in your inventory that are by default associated with this room. So you can see we've already been there. There's the chamber pot and the ragged blanket, and then all these other world items. A lock, the ceiling, the bars, the moonlight, the floor, the door, the window. Some of these are listed out in the description. Some of them can be hidden from the description unless you call them out specifically. And if you use your arrow keys, this is where the arrow keys come in handy. You can actually toggle between items here. So you can go to previous and next. And you can see here's room 1. All the rooms that are attached to it, their ID numbers. The name of this room, its description, its world items. It has bricks. Retrievable items, there's a crumpled paper that we didn't pick up when we passed through the courtyard area. So 2 default world items, default retrievable items. This one doesn't have any retrievable items. 3 doesn't have any retrievable items. 4, you can page up and down by pushing up and down on the arrow keys as well when there's too much text to fit on one screen. And you can see here that it does not have any retrievable items either. There's no room 5. So I'll go back to CMD view room 4, which is the forest. And since that's the room I'm in right now, and what we want to do is we want to use what it says up at the top here, property edit. So to edit the properties of this room, you can use CMD edit and then the line number. And so we want to add the golden apple that exists in the list of items but is not attached to any room yet. We want to add it to room 4 as one of the default retrievable items so we can pick it up and then give it to the imp. So what we do is we do CMD edit 5, line 5, which is the default retrievable items. We hit that and then we get instructions for how to edit this property. Editing room 4, property 5, which is room items. Edit the default list of retrievable items in this room. The current value is empty. Required format is comma separated numbers, no spaces. So item ID, comma item ID, comma item ID. So you can add however many items you want to, all just by separating them with commas. And so it says type the desired replacement value. And since we know that the ID of the apple retrievable item was 7, we just type 7, hit enter. It says, are you sure you want to replace nothing with 7? Type yes to confirm, no to cancel. I hit yes. And now if we scroll down, default retrievable items in the forest, now we have the golden apple. And so if we hit look, we have just hacked this text adventure. We took one of the items that had never been attached to any room that maybe the developer wanted to put in at some point but never did. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And now we have attached it ourselves to the forest room. And so you can see down at the bottom it says UC golden apple, green goblin, sleeping blue imp. So we actually directly edited this text adventure to give us the golden apple. So now we can say get apple. It says you take the golden apple, a sparkling apple pulled from thin air. How is this even possible? Type inventory, etc. So now if I look at the apple, how did you get this apple? It was never intended to exist in this dimension. It wasn't ever attached to a room. Well, now it has been because we've hacked the system. We're hackers. And so now I can give apple to imp. You give the golden apple to the imp, who immediately awakes at its approach. The imp smiles with a fanged grin much wider than its face, then bites into the golden metal apple, sending sparks into the air around its head. It carefully devours the entire apple, looks at you, gives you a thumbs up, and vanishes, leaving behind a sulfurous smell. Hey, it forgot to take its towel. So maybe that thumbs up is a Terminator reference. I don't know. Who knows what I was thinking when I wrote all this stuff. So now we can get towel. You take the towel, you're tempted to snuggle into its total dry softness and rest. So now we can go to the courtyard. Why don't we get that paper while we're at it and read paper. The mysterious paper says not all is as it seems. You have more power than you know. So that's just a hint that this is more than just a text adventure that you're playing. You have power to edit the guts and the structure of this text adventure. So now let's go to the cave. You enter the cave area. The shallow cave is dimly lit by the pale sunrise. A bank of white rock appears to grow out of the wall. By the way, if you look at the sunrise, although it is immensely beautiful to see the pinks and purples of the rising sun, you sense a degree of artificiality. Just a hint that, hey, you're in a simulation, and maybe you should be thinking on a meta level about this game. So shallow cave is dimly lit by the pale sunrise. A bank of white rock appears to grow out of the wall. If you try to get rocks, your hands slip off the wet rock bank. You can't seem to get a grip on it. Use towel on rocks, of course. You lightly dab the wet, glistening rock with the extra dry towel. The rock is now very dry and looks almost ready to crumble. So now you can get rock, and you take the dry rock. A fist-sized chunk of white rock breaks off in your hand. So in your inventory now, I've got dry rock, crumpled paper, the towel, and the pot shard. So one of the things you can do in these types of games is to combine inventory items. So I'm going to say use shard on rock. You deftly carve into the soft, dry soapstone. Soon you're holding a crude cup with a nice handle, like a mug. You briefly consider carving world's best text adventurer into the side, then decide not to waste any more time. So now we're going to go back to the courtyard. You know that joke landed. You're cracking up right now, I'm sure. And then go to the riverbank. This riverbank area is just to kind of also hint that, hey, this world is like glitching out. So a glitchy water falls from a high mountain to a river. At face height is a confusing anomaly. If you look at the anomaly, you can't quite describe the anomaly. It encircles an incomprehensible jumble of words and symbols. Cough, cough, code. It is mesmerizing, but makes your head hurt if you stare too long. So if you try to get the water, it's too dangerous to stick your head in the waterfall for a drink. Maybe if you had a vessel to catch the water in. So if you use cup on waterfall, carefully holding the convenient mug handle to keep your hand out of danger, you dip the mug into the waterfall anomaly. You now have a cup of ... anomaly. Look cup. Maybe you have to look mug, I think it's called. You filled your mug with anomalous code. You wonder what would happen if you drank it. So now, if you drink the code, you take a sip of the anomaly, and the resulting shock causes you to drop the mug, which shatters into a rainbow of frozen mug shards. The world around you fades to white. Your eyes roll back in your head. Your body disintegrates as you feel yourself transported through space-time. You arrive in the astral code plane. So if you look here in this room, you reach the astral plane of code. Your adventure is complete. Congrats. So you beat the game. That's how you do it. That's the walkthrough. But you still feel creative power pulsing through your being. Create your own adventure with your new powers and submit it for players everywhere to enjoy. For a complete list of world-creating commands, type Cmd help. For a list of user-submitted games, use Cmd web list. For tutorials on how to start making your own adventure using this engine, visit typehelp.org. Thank you for playing Made by Me 2021. So yeah, there's a lot more behind the Cmd command in this game, and that's really the kind of hidden gem here, I guess, for this game, is that you can make your own game. You can make your own text adventure. And not only that, but you can submit it. I'll review it once you submit it. And if everything looks good and we like it, then we will publish it, and it will become available for everybody else who plays this game to also play your text adventure. So how do we do that? A good place to start is Cmd help. Kind of another callback to the TypeHelp name of the game. So these are all of the Cmd commands. List, so if you type Cmd list and then something after that, you'll get all the game objects of that provided type. So you can list rooms, items, W items. W items are world items. Those are the ones you can't pick up. Regular items are the ones that you can pick up, the retrievable items. And then actions. Actions are really important because they're basically a set of verbs and then a bunch of stuff that, a bunch of flags that you can turn on and off, or lists that you can provide that will affect the game state based on what the user types in. View shows the details of a specific game object. So Cmd view room plus the room ID shows you the details of that room. Same thing for an item or a world item or an action. And from when you're in the view mode, that's where you can also do editing. So core game structure commands, I just paged down Cmd delete type ID, you can remove an object from the game. Cmd add type adds an empty object of the specified type. So that type would be action, item, W item, or room. Cmd edit line number, that's how we ended up adding the apple to the room, was using the edit when we were viewing the room. And then there's also a data store for your local game data, so it gets saved onto your device or onto your computer. You can do Cmd local info to show the name and author of the local game that you're playing. Cmd local name will let you set the name of the game you're playing. Cmd local author will let you set the author credit for your game. So if you're going to submit the game, you will start a new game, Cmd local new, which is create new empty game, all unsaved local data will be lost. And then you'll give it a name and you'll give it an author credit. And then you'll start adding rooms and actions and items and world items to your game. And once it's all done, then you'll save it to a save slot, and then you can submit a save slot to me for review, and then I can publish that save slot for everybody else to play. So Cmd local list, you can view, you have 5 save slots on your local device, and so you can use those to, if you want to work on multiple games at the same time or save different versions of your game. Cmd local play will let you play the game that's been saved into a local save slot. Cmd new, we went over that. Cmd local save, that saves it. Cmd set start plus the ID, that sets the room that when someone comes to play your game, that's the room that they start in. So usually it'll probably be room 0, just depending on the order that you develop your game in, but you can change that to other rooms if you need to. Cmd restart, that just resets you to the beginning of whatever game is loaded currently. So if you've collected items, inventory items, or done actions and changed the world in whatever way, restart will start you back in the start room without any items and with everything reset about the game. So it loses all the progress, but it's helpful when you're developing a game because you'll be kind of tweaking stuff as you go, and then you'll usually want to restart and test it from the beginning without any of the actions you've taken. And so then there's also a web component to this. There's a list of web commands here. So Cmd web list will list approved games from the web repository. So those are games that I've approved and have been published into the system and that other people can play. So you can see the list of that. And then Cmd web play plus the ID of the game will let you play games that other people have submitted or that you've submitted and that have been approved. Cmd web submit ID. So once you've saved into a local save slot, then you can submit that save slot ID to me for approval. So submit one of your saved local slots for approval and web sharing. So the engine's by me, PestoForce.com. It's not free to run the server, so if anybody wants, and if anybody likes this, I don't know, this is like a big experiment for me to see if anybody is interested in making text adventure games. And if you are, then if you want to pitch a couple dollars my way to help pay for the server space that we're storing these things on and for keeping this up and running, then you can do that at typehelp.org. Thanks for playing and contributing. Love me, 2021. And that's basically it. I just want to show you real quick Cmd web list loading, and here are the user submitted games. So this is actually pulling from my server. I've actually made another game. It's called Mending Day, and it's a poem as a text adventure. And so if you want to play that one, I'm not going to make a tutorial for that one. Maybe someone else can do that. If you want to play it, you can do Cmd web play and then the number 1 because it's the first one in the list, and hit go. It loads it. You're in a quaint country cottage. Your mother's repairing torn clothes in a rocking chair. A window looks out on your yard with an ancient stone wall. You see shovel, work gloves, spacer, shims, and your mother. So here's a new text adventure that's available just through Cmd web list. And my vision for this is that you who are watching this video, playing this game, will undertake the challenge to make a game or make multiple games and submit it and publish it for other people to play. I think I've covered everything. Once again, support at typehelp.org. And also, if you want to support the preservation of Flash on the web, please visit Ruffle and look at the support options there. And that's it.